There's a truth most people spend their entire lives running from. It's uncomfortable. It strips away every excuse, every rationalization, every convenient story we tell ourselves about why things are the way they are. Here it is. Your bank account is a mirror. Not of your circumstances, not of the economy, not of your parents' choices or your boss's limitations. Your bank account reflects with brutal accuracy the beliefs you hold about money, about yourself, and about what you deserve. Napoleon Hill spent 20 years studying the wealthiest people of his era: Andrew Carnegie, Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, Theodore Roosevelt. He watched fortunes built from nothing. He witnessed poverty transformed into prosperity. And through all of it, he discovered something that rattled the foundations of conventional wisdom. Wealth doesn't begin in the marketplace. It doesn't start with opportunity or capital or connections. Wealth begins in the mind. It begins with a single thought, nurtured into a belief, crystallized into a burning desire, and manifested through unwavering action. The moment you grasp this, truly grasp it, everything changes. Because if your external reality is a reflection of your internal beliefs, then the power to change your life doesn't rest in anyone else's hands. It rests entirely in yours. The government can't give it to you. Your employer can't hand it over. Even a lottery ticket can't sustain it. The only lasting transformation comes from within, from the systematic reconstruction of the thoughts you think and the beliefs you hold sacred. Look at your life right now. Look at your finances without judgment, without shame, without the comfortable narratives you've constructed. What you see is not random. It's not bad luck or poor timing. What you see is the physical manifestation of your dominant thoughts over the past months and years. If you've been thinking thoughts of scarcity, your bank account shows scarcity. If you've been harboring beliefs about money being difficult to obtain, you'll find it difficult to obtain. If you've been operating under the conviction that wealth is for other people, people smarter, luckier, more connected, then wealth will continue to elude you. This isn't mysticism. This isn't wishful thinking. This is the fundamental principle that separates those who build wealth from those who merely wish for it. Your mind is not a passive observer of reality. Your mind is the architect of reality. Every thought you think sends out vibrations into the universe, attracting circumstances and opportunities that match their frequency. Henry Ford understood this when he said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. He wasn't being clever. He was stating a law as immutable as gravity. The problem is that most people operate on autopilot. They inherited their money beliefs from parents who inherited them from their parents, who inherited them during the Great Depression or some other era of limitation. These beliefs get passed down like genetic code, shaping behavior, limiting vision, creating invisible ceilings that feel as solid as concrete. Money doesn't grow on trees. The rich get richer and the poor get poorer. It takes money to make money. We're not the kind of family that has money. These sentences aren't observations. They're programming. They're mental viruses that infect the subconscious mind and sabotage every attempt at financial improvement. Consider the story of Conrad Hilton, who built a hotel empire from almost nothing. As a young man, he cut out a photograph of the Waldorf Astoria in New York City, the finest hotel in America at the time, wrote across it, the greatest of them all. He carried this picture with him, looked at it daily, visualized himself owning it. People thought he was crazy. The Waldorf wasn't for sale. Even if it were, Hilton didn't have the resources to buy it. But he held the image in his mind with such intensity, such faith, such absolute conviction that 18 years later he purchased the Waldorf Astoria. The external reality bent to match his internal vision. This is not a coincidence. This is not luck. This is the precise operation of mental law. Your subconscious mind cannot distinguish between a vividly imagined experience and a real one. When you repeatedly visualize yourself in possession of wealth, living abundantly, making decisions from a place of prosperity, your subconscious accepts this as reality and begins working to close the gap between your current circumstances and your mental image. It guides you toward opportunities. It sharpens your perception. It gives you courage when you need it and persistence when obstacles appear. But here's what stops most people. They want the wealth without changing the beliefs. They want the mansion while still thinking poor thoughts. They want the business success while harboring deep-seated convictions that they're not smart enough, not disciplined enough, not worthy enough. It doesn't work that way. You cannot outperform your self-concept. You cannot rise higher than the ceiling of your own expectations. Your external world will always eventually conform to your internal world. Jim Carrey understood this principle before he became one of the highest-paid actors in Hollywood. When he was broke, struggling, driving his beat-up Toyota around Los Angeles, he wrote himself a check for $10 million. He dated it Thanksgiving 1995 and added the notation for acting services rendered. He carried that check in his wallet, looked at it daily, visualized receiving it. In 1994, just before Thanksgiving, 1995, he received a role in Dumb and Dumber that paid him exactly $10 million. The universe delivered precisely what his mind had claimed with unwavering faith. You might be thinking, but I've tried visualization. I've tried positive thinking. It didn't work. And here's why you didn't believe it. You went through the motions, but deep down, underneath the affirmations and the vision boards, you held onto your old beliefs. You said, I am wealthy, but you felt poor. You declared money flows to me easily, but you believed it was hard. Your subconscious isn't fooled by words. It responds to feeling, to conviction, to the emotional intensity behind your thoughts. Thomas Edison failed 10,000 times before creating the light bulb. 10,000 times. But he never saw these as failures. He saw them as discoveries 10,000 ways that didn't work, bringing him closer to the one way that did. His belief in the eventual success was so absolute that failure wasn't even in his vocabulary. His mind refused to accept defeat because he'd already claimed victory in his imagination. The physical manifestation was just a matter of time. This is the power of definiteness of purpose combined with unwavering faith. When you know what you want with crystal clarity, when you believe in its attainment with absolute certainty, and when you back this belief with persistent action, the universe has no choice but to yield. It's not magic. It's mental law. It's the way reality operates at its deepest level. Right now, in this moment, you are operating under a set of beliefs about money that you probably didn't consciously choose. They were installed early, reinforced repeatedly, and now they run automatically in the background of your mind, directing your decisions, shaping your perceptions, determining your results. If you want different results, you must first identify these beliefs and then systematically replace them. Start by examining your automatic thoughts about money. When you see a luxury car, what's your immediate reaction? Resentment, admiration, desire, dismissal? When you think about wealthy people, how do you characterize them? Lucky, corrupt, smart, blessed? Your answers reveal your programming. If you harbor negative associations with wealth or wealthy people, you will unconsciously sabotage your own path to prosperity. Your mind will not allow you to become what you despise. Napoleon Hill called this the mastermind principle, the harmonizing of thought toward a definite purpose. Your thoughts must be in harmony, all moving in the same direction. If part of you wants wealth while another part believes wealthy people are greedy, you're at war with yourself. The internal conflict creates external stagnation. You must resolve this conflict. You must examine every belief, question its validity, and consciously choose beliefs that serve your highest vision. Andrew Carnegie went from poverty to becoming one of the wealthiest men in history. He wasn't born into wealth. He wasn't given opportunities. He created them by holding in his mind an unshakable belief that he was destined for greatness. He worked as a telegraph operator, but he thought like an industrialist. He performed menial tasks, but he envisioned himself running an empire. The gap between his reality and his vision didn't discourage him, it motivated him. He knew the external would eventually match the internal if he remained faithful to his vision. This is where most people fail. They get discouraged by the gap. They look at where they are, compare it to where they want to be, and the distance feels insurmountable. So they give up, they settle, they rationalize, they tell themselves it wasn't meant to be. But the gap is where the growth happens. The gap is where faith is tested and strengthened. The gap is where you prove to the universe and to yourself that you're serious about your transformation. Every single day you are either strengthening your prosperity consciousness or reinforcing your poverty consciousness. There is no neutral. Every thought about money is a vote for abundance or scarcity. Every decision you make is training your mind to think like a wealthy person or a poor person. When you see something you want but can't currently afford, do you say, I can't afford that, or do you ask, how can I afford that? The difference is everything. One statement closes the door, the other opens it. Walt Disney was fired from a newspaper for lacking imagination and having no original ideas. Think about that. The man who created an entertainment empire that touches every corner of the globe was told he had no imagination. He was rejected over 300 times before securing financing for Disneyland. 300 rejections. But his vision was so clear, so powerful, so absolutely real to him that rejection couldn't penetrate it. He saw Disneyland in his mind years before it existed in reality. He walked through its gates, heard the laughter of children, felt the magic in the air. To him it already existed. The physical construction was just making visible what was already real in consciousness. This is the secret that changes everything. Creation happens twice. First in mind, then in matter. First in consciousness, then in circumstance. First in imagination, then in manifestation. You cannot create externally what you haven't first created internally. The builder sees the house before the first brick is laid. The entrepreneur sees the business before the first transaction. The wealthy person experiences abundance in consciousness before it appears in the bank account. Your current financial situation is not your final destination unless you accept it as such. It's simply the result of the thoughts you've been thinking, the beliefs you've been holding, and the actions you've been taking up until now. But right now, in this moment, you can change course. You can decide that your past doesn't determine your future. You can choose new thoughts, adopt new beliefs, and take new actions that align with the prosperity you desire. The mind is the master power that shapes and builds. It can raise you to greatness or reduce you to mediocrity. It can open doors or slam them shut. It can attract wealth or repel it. And here's the beautiful, terrifying truth. You are in complete control of your mind. Not your circumstances, not other people, you. You choose what thoughts to entertain. You choose what beliefs to accept. You choose where to direct your attention and your energy. Most people abdicate this power. They hand over control of their minds to the news, to social media, to the opinions of relatives who themselves have never achieved what you're trying to achieve. They allow external conditions to dictate internal states. When the economy struggles, they think poor thoughts. When others succeed, they feel resentment instead of inspiration. They become reactors instead of creators, victims instead of victors, passengers instead of pilots. But you're different. You're reading these words because something inside you knows there's more. You sense perhaps faintly, perhaps powerfully, that you were designed for abundance, that scarcity is not your natural state, that the financial struggles you've experienced are not punishments or evidence of unworthiness, but simply the consequences of operating with faulty programming. Colonel Sanders was 65 years old, broke living on Social Security checks when he decided to franchise his fried chicken recipe. 65. An age when most people are settling into retirement, accepting their lot, making peace with whatever they've accumulated. He was rejected over 1,000 times. He drove around the country sleeping in his car, getting turned down by restaurant after restaurant, 1,000 rejections. But he held in his mind an absolute certainty that his recipe was valuable, that people would pay for it, that he would build something significant. He never wavered. He never doubted. And eventually the external reality caught up with his internal conviction. Kentucky Fried Chicken became a global phenomenon, and the Colonel became a multimillionaire. The lesson isn't about fried chicken. The lesson is about the indomitable power of a made-up mind. When you make a decision, a real decision, not a wish or a hope or maybe the universe conspires to support you, opportunities appear, resources materialize, the right people show up at the right time, not because of magic, but because your mind operating at full conviction perceives possibilities that were invisible before. You become solution-focused instead of problem-focused. You see opportunities where others see obstacles. Your beliefs about money create a filter through which you perceive reality. If you believe money is scarce, you'll notice every price increase, every rejection, every setback. These will confirm your belief, strengthening it, making it more deeply rooted. If you believe money flows abundantly, you'll notice opportunities, solutions, creative possibilities. You'll attract mentors, ideas, partnerships. Not because the universe plays favorites, but because you're tuned to a different frequency. Think about radio waves. The music is always there, broadcast constantly through the air around you, but you only hear it when you tune your receiver to the right frequency. Change the frequency, change what you receive. Your mind is the receiver. Your beliefs determine the frequency. Tune to scarcity, receive scarcity. Tune to abundance, receive abundance. It's not punishment or reward. It's simply law. Napoleon Hill identified this as one of the 13 principles of success. Faith. Not religious faith, though it can include that. Faith is absolute, unwavering belief in the certainty of your desired outcome. Faith that doesn't crumble when circumstances challenge it. Faith that persists through delay, through setback, through apparent failure. Faith that says this is already mine in consciousness, it's only a matter of time before it manifests in form. This kind of faith isn't passive. It doesn't sit back and wait for the universe to deliver. It takes inspired action. It moves toward the goal even when the path isn't clear. It makes decisions from the end result, not from current circumstances. When Oprah Winfrey was told she was unfit for television news, she didn't argue with the external opinion. She held firm to her internal knowing that she had something valuable to offer. She didn't know how it would unfold, but she knew it would. She acted as if success was inevitable because in her mind it was. This is the difference between people who achieve wealth and people who merely wish for it. Wishers hope. Achievers know. Wishers wait for conditions to be perfect. Achievers create perfection through their actions. Wishers are deterred by obstacles. Achievers view obstacles as feedback, as redirections, as opportunities to refine their approach. Wishers give up when things get hard. Achievers understand that difficulty is part of the price, and they pay it willingly because they know the value of what they're creating. Your bank account right now is showing you what you've been willing to accept. It's revealing the upper limit of what you believe you deserve. It's displaying the ceiling of your self-worth. And here's the uncomfortable question you must answer honestly. What if this is exactly what you've been asking for? Not consciously, perhaps, but subconsciously through years of thoughts, beliefs, and actions that all pointed to this exact amount. If that feels offensive, good. Let it offend you. Let it shake you. Because the alternative, that you're a victim of circumstances beyond your control, is far worse. That narrative steals your power. It makes you helpless. It puts your financial future in someone else's hands. But if your bank account reflects your beliefs, then you have all the power. You can change your beliefs. You can transform your thoughts. You can reprogram your mind. And when you do, your bank account must change to reflect the new programming, J.K. Rowling was a single mother on welfare, struggling with depression, rejected by 12 publishing houses. 12 publishers looked at Harry Potter and said, no. Can you imagine? One of the most successful book series in history, eventually worth billions, rejected 12 times. But Rowling held the vision. She believed in the story. She knew it had value even when the experts disagreed. Her faith in her work was stronger than the rejection. Her internal conviction was more powerful than external opinion. And eventually one publisher said yes. That's all it took. One yes to change everything. But here's what most people don't understand about that story. The 12 rejections were necessary. They weren't obstacles to success. They were part of the path to success. Each rejection strengthened her resolve, clarified her vision, deepened her commitment. They burned away any doubt, any hesitation, any attachment to external validation. By the time she received that yes, she was unshakable. She had proven to herself and to the universe that she would not give up. That's when the floodgates opened. Success doesn't come to the timid. Wealth doesn't flow to the uncertain. Abundance doesn't fill hands that aren't willing to remain open even when they appear empty. You must develop the kind of faith that persists beyond reason, beyond logic, beyond the evidence of your senses. You must be willing to believe in the invisible, to trust the process, to hold steady when everything around you says to give up. This is not about denying reality. It's about not being imprisoned by current reality. There's a difference. You can acknowledge where you are while refusing to accept it as where you'll stay. You can be honest about your bank balance while simultaneously working to transform it. You can recognize limitations while knowing they're temporary. The key is never to let your current circumstances become your mental dwelling place. Where your attention goes, energy flows. If you constantly focus on lack, counting what you don't have, lamenting what you can't afford, worrying about bills, you're pouring energy into scarcity. You're fertilizing weeds. You're strengthening the very thing you want to eliminate. Instead, direct your attention to abundance. Notice what you do have. Appreciate it genuinely. Visualize what you want to have. Feel it as if it's already yours. This isn't denial, it's direction. You're steering your mind toward what you want to create rather than what you want to escape. Henry Ford revolutionized manufacturing and became one of the wealthiest men in America, but he started with nothing. No capital, no formal education, no connections. What he had was an idea and an absolute refusal to let go of it. He envisioned a car that ordinary people could afford. Everyone told him it was impossible. The automobile was a luxury item for the wealthy. But Ford's vision was so clear, so detailed, so absolutely real to him that he couldn't be dissuaded. He saw assembly lines before they existed. He saw millions of Model Ts on roads across America. He saw the future and then he built it. That's the power of a definiteness of purpose combined with burning desire. When you know exactly what you want, when you want it with intensity, that borders on obsession. When you refuse to accept any other outcome, the universe bends. Not always quickly, not always easily, but eventually, inevitably, it bends. Your mind has two parts, the conscious and the subconscious. Your conscious mind is the captain issuing orders. Your subconscious is the crew executing those orders without question. The problem is most people don't realize they're issuing orders all day long through their thoughts. I can't afford this. Order issued. Subconscious gets to work ensuring you can't afford it. I'm not good with money. Order issued. Subconscious ensures you make poor financial decisions. Rich people are greedy. Order issued. Subconscious makes sure you never become what you've defined as reprehensible. You must become conscious of the orders you're issuing. Every thought is an instruction. Every belief is a command. Your subconscious doesn't judge whether the order is good or bad, helpful or harmful. It simply executes. Give it empowering instructions and it will empower you. Give it limiting instructions and it will limit you. The choice is always yours, but you must be awake to make it. Muhammad Ali didn't become the greatest boxer of all time through physical prowess alone. He had tremendous skill, yes, but so did his opponents. What separated him was his mental game. He declared himself the greatest before he had evidence to support it. He spoke it, believed it, embodied it. He created the reality in his mind first, and then his body followed. His opponents were defeated before they entered the ring because they believed what Ali believed about himself. His conviction was so powerful it became contagious. This is how you must approach wealth. Declare it before you see it. Believe it before you experience it. Act as if it's already yours while you're working to manifest it. Not from arrogance, but from faith. Not from pretense, but from the understanding that creation happens in mind before matter. The wealthy person and the poor person can walk down the same street and see two completely different worlds. The poor person sees limitations, expenses, things they can't have. The wealthy person sees opportunities, investments, possibilities. Same street, different perception. The difference isn't in the street, it's in the mind, observing it. You've been trained to see scarcity. It's everywhere in our culture. The news tells you resources are limited. Advertisements tell you you're not enough without their product. Social media shows you everyone else's highlight reel, making you feel behind. Friends and family, often with good intentions, warn you to be realistic, to play it safe, to not get your hopes up. This constant bombardment of scarcity thinking seeps into your subconscious, creating beliefs you never consciously chose but that now run your financial life. Breaking free requires vigilance. You must guard your mind like a fortress, carefully screening what you allow in. Stop consuming financial fear. Stop participating in conversations about how hard everything is. Stop agreeing with people when they complain about the economy. Not because you're in denial, but because you're in creation mode. You're building something new, and you can't build with the old tools. You can't construct abundance with thoughts of scarcity any more than you can build a house with blueprints for a prison. Ray Kroc was 52 years old selling milkshake machines when he discovered a small restaurant in California run by the McDonald brothers. He saw something they didn't see, not just a restaurant, but a system that could be replicated worldwide. He was 52, past the age most people think of as their prime, but his vision was just beginning. He bought the rights, franchised the concept, and built an empire. Not because he was younger, smarter, or luckier than everyone else, because he saw possibility where others saw a simple burger joint. Your age doesn't matter. Your education doesn't matter. Your past failures don't matter. What matters is the vision you hold and the faith you bring to it. Colonel Sanders was 65. Ray Kroc was 52. Laura Ingalls Wilder published her first book at 65. Grandma Moses began painting at 78. The universe doesn't care about your timeline. It cares about your conviction. Right now you might be thinking about all the reasons why wealth hasn't come yet. The economy, your job, your debt, your responsibilities, your lack of education or capital or connections. These feel like valid reasons. They feel like solid explanations. But they're not reasons, they're excuses, and there's a profound difference. A reason empowers you to find solutions. An excuse absolves you from taking action. Every single wealthy person you admire faced obstacles. Every one. They had less than you in some area, less money, less education, less support, less health, less time. The difference wasn't in what they faced. It was in how they responded. They refused to let circumstances define them. They refused to accept limitation as permanent. They refused to trade their vision for the comfort of excuses. This is hard to hear. It's easier to blame something external. It's more comfortable to point to the government, the economy, your boss, your parents, your neighborhood. But comfort is the enemy of growth. Comfort keeps you stuck. Comfort whispers that you're doing fine just as you are, even as your dreams die quietly in the background. The truth, the liberating, empowering truth is that you have far more control than you've been willing to accept. Thomas Edison's laboratory burned down when he was 67 years old. Decades of research, prototypes, records gone. Most people would have called it a catastrophe, a sign to give up the final blow. Edison stood watching the flames and said, "Go get your mother. She'll never see a fire like this again." The next morning he started rebuilding. At 67, after losing nearly everything, he saw opportunity for a fresh start. That's the mindset of someone who understands that circumstances are temporary, but vision is eternal. Your bank account is temporary. Your current income is temporary. Your debt is temporary. These are all conditions, and conditions change. What's not temporary is the mind that observes these conditions and decides what they mean. You can look at an empty bank account and decide you're a failure doomed to struggle forever. Or you can look at that same empty bank account and decide it's a clean slate, a starting point, the before picture in your transformation story. The meaning you assign to your circumstances is more powerful than the circumstances themselves. Two people lose their jobs. One spirals into depression, convinced life is against them. The other sees it as the push they needed to start their own business. Same event. Completely different trajectories. The event didn't determine the outcome, the interpretation did. Napoleon Hill wrote, "Every adversity, every failure, every heartache carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit." Not sometimes, every time. But most people never discover the seed because they're too busy mourning the adversity. They camp out in victimhood, gathering evidence for why life is unfair, building a case for why they can't succeed. Meanwhile, the seed of opportunity remains buried, waiting for someone with the vision to recognize it and the courage to cultivate it. You must become a prospector in your own life, constantly searching for the gold hidden in every situation. Lost a job. Maybe you were meant to start a business. Rejected by an investor. Maybe they would have taken you in the wrong direction. Facing financial pressure. Maybe it's forcing you to develop skills and resourcefulness you wouldn't have otherwise gained. There's always gold. Always. But only those who look for it find it. Sarah Blakely created Spanx with $5,000 in savings and no experience in fashion or retail. She was selling fax machines door to door when she had an idea for footless pantyhose. She wrote a patent herself reading books from Barnes & Noble. She was rejected by manufacturer after manufacturer. Nobody took her seriously. But she believed in her product with such intensity that rejection couldn't penetrate. She didn't have money, but she had resourcefulness. She didn't have connections, but she had determination. She didn't have experience, but she had unshakable faith. Today, she's a self-made billionaire. What she had that most people lack wasn't intelligence or luck or privilege. She had the willingness to act on her vision despite not knowing how it would unfold. She had the courage to take the first step without seeing the entire staircase. She had faith in herself stronger than her fear of failure. And that combination, vision, faith, courage, action, is the formula that creates every fortune ever built. Your beliefs about money were formed in childhood, reinforced through experience, and solidified through repetition. By the time you're an adult, they feel like facts. They feel like truth. But they're not. They're just stories you've told yourself so many times that you forgot they were stories. The story that money is hard to come by. The story that you have to work incredibly hard for every dollar. The story that wealthy people are different than you, smarter, luckier, more deserving. These stories serve a purpose. They protect you from disappointment. If you believe wealth is impossible for you, you never have to risk trying and failing. If you believe rich people are corrupt, you never have to confront your own potential for greatness. If you believe money doesn't matter, you never have to deal with the pain of not having it. But this protection comes at enormous cost. It keeps you small. It keeps you safe. It keeps you broke. The prison isn't made of steel bars. It's made of beliefs. And the beautiful, terrible truth is that you hold the key. You've always held it. But you have to be willing to walk out. You have to be willing to leave the familiar confines of your current identity and step into the unknown territory of who you could become. That's terrifying. That's why most people never do it. They'd rather live in a familiar prison than an unfamiliar palace. Elon Musk has faced bankruptcy multiple times. Both Tesla and SpaceX nearly collapsed. He invested every dollar he had, went into debt, faced ridicule from experts who said his ventures were impossible. There were moments when failure seemed inevitable, but his vision was bigger than his fear. His commitment was stronger than his doubt. He didn't know if he would succeed, but he knew he had to try. That willingness to risk everything for a vision is what separates builders from bystanders. You don't need to risk everything, but you do need to risk something. You need to risk the comfort of your current beliefs, risk the familiarity of your current circumstances, risk the identity you've constructed around being someone who struggles financially. That identity has served you in certain ways. It's gotten you sympathy, it's lowered expectations, it's given you an excuse for not pursuing your dreams, but it's also kept you stuck. Who would you be without your money story, without the narrative about why you can't, why it's hard, why others have advantages you don't? Who would you be if you approached wealth with the innocent expectation of a child who hasn't yet learned limitation. What would you attempt if you knew with absolute certainty that you would succeed? These aren't rhetorical questions. They're the beginning of your transformation. Because transformation doesn't happen by doing more. It happens by becoming different. You don't need new strategies or tactics or systems. You need a new identity. You need to become the person for whom wealth is natural.